and we'll share this meeting recording with everybody. I'm going to show you our agenda real quick and get started. Sorry, I thought I lost WebEx for a second. So today we're going to look at our grantee resources page, which gives you more information about the GovGrants system. We're going to do a demonstration of completing and submitting a reimbursement request in GovGrants. And that's going to be whether it's a system generated reimbursement request or if you all generate it yourselves, and we'll go over that. For those of you, then we'll have questions, so you all will be able to ask questions about the reimbursement request. Those of you who have not accepted your grants in GovGrants, after we finish with reimbursement request questions, we're going to demonstrate how to accept your grant in GovGrants. And then if there are any folks who haven't registered in GovGrants or need to invite other users from their organization to register, we'll be able to demonstrate that as well. So not everybody has to stay for these last three pieces, but we are going to cover them today. So we're going to get started with the grantee resources first. We have a page available for you all. I'm going to share it. It's on louisvilleky.gov, and it's a grantee resources page. Up at the top is a series of previous WebEx trainings that we did covering reimbursement requests and budget revisions, risk assessments, subawards and budgets, your grants, and then Louisville Metro's requirements for the reimbursements. But we also have the links, so you can get, you can either click this link or this link, and it will take you into the GovGrants system where you can log on. We've got a user guide for the registration process, a user guide for the risk assessment, and then a user guide that's for the entire GovGrants system. These are demo videos that you can go in and watch to learn how to do some of the other steps in GovGrants. For instance, if you're having trouble navigating the system, you can go into the layout training video and learn a little bit more about the layout. And then down here are some other demos that we did via WebEx. This section right here is more demo based, while up here we're talking more about our requirements. So we do offer this. If anybody has not received our document, I don't really have slides today. We're going to be working within the system, but I was just going to say, so that's a really good question. If anybody hasn't received I'm going to call it a flyer. It's about a 3-page document on getting started in GovGrants. If you want to put your email into the chat box, we will email you that getting started in GovGrants document today. And it tells you how to get to the grantee resources page. It provides the URLs for GovGrants. Okay. So now we're going to look at GovGrants. And I'm going to ask during the demo if you all have questions, if you'll type them into the chat box. And then either I will address your questions during the demo or our team will answer in the chat box. Once we finish the demonstration, we can open it up and you all can ask questions and not just type them into chat. So during this training, I'm not able to use our real grants management site. I'm using a testing site. So if you pay attention to the URL, it's different from what you all are going to use, but otherwise this is going to work the exact same. And I've got a couple of other screens. If you see me looking off, it's because I've got resources for this training on both of the screens and I need to access them. So this is what GovGrants will look like. And up here is the login. And I'm going to log in as though I'm a grantee. And then we'll get started. So this is what the system looks like when you log in. And this is the primary home page. And this tells you which tasks are awaiting your work. So each person who logs in will have different tasks assigned, or a person who is not a submitter might not have any tasks. It just depends on how each grantee has their own operations. So some grantees, one person might do everything in the system. Other grantees might have multiple people in there. And I'm just going to briefly show you this left navigation. I am not going to be working out of this, but here's another way you can access your pending task, your completed task. You can look at your organizational profile. These are the different grants and reimbursement requests that have been worked on recently. And then here's your calendar that shows you what your tasks are. So a red task means you're late. A green task means you have time to complete it. But primarily when you are working to submit a reimbursement request, you're going to look at this task summary by phase, and there's a monitoring section. And here you can see there's a 1. I'm going to click on that 1. And it's going to take me to this reimbursement request. So it's pretty easy to navigate directly to the reimbursement request. But I think before we start the reimbursement request, we're going to look at the budget for this grant. So I'm going to pull this up. It says grants up at the top, and I'm going to look at my grants as though I'm the grantee. And I'm sorry, the GovGrants sometimes takes a couple seconds to move from screen to screen.
Yeah, and the UAT environment's a little bit slower than the production environment too, just because it has lower resources, sure.
So I think, so this is my grant. It's for wraparound services. It says it's active. And what I want to do is go into the sub-award. And we're going to take a look at the sub-award, which is your grant. And you can see here, it's got the wraparound services. Here's information about my organization. Here's a description about the sub-award. Here's our key contact. So if Metro government needs to get in touch with someone, we would look at the key contact. And then here's where you all operate the program. But we're going to go in and look at the budget because it's very important that any reimbursement request reflect the budget. So in this budget, we have contractual. So those are any contracts that are being charged to the budget. We've got fringe benefits. We've got personnel cost. We've got supplies. And we have some travel, so that's local mileage. So you want to make sure that when you submit your reimbursement request, you're not requesting for any costs that aren't in your budget. So I'm going to navigate back to the home page. And we're going to start the reimbursement request. I'm going to go to that monitoring again and click on one. And so this says create payment request, due date. I'm late. I should have submitted this. So up at the top of your screen, there is, you can enlarge. It's got a percent, and then there is a plus or minus on the other side of that percent, and you can enlarge your screen. I will go ahead and try to enlarge mine, but I want to make sure that I'm not going to lose any detail that I need to show you all. So I'm going to click on this little arrow. Oh, and Daniel just put in chat how to pull up the full screen in WebEx. And this is the reimbursement request. There are two types of reimbursement requests. There are system-generated reimbursement requests that get generated every month by GovGrants. Those are the reimbursement requests that you should use 90% of the time when you are requesting payment from us, because they're tied into the terms and conditions of your grant agreement. So this one, GovGrants populated for me. I didn't have to go in and create it. I am going to show you later, though, how to create one on your own in case you need to send an extra reimbursement request. For some reason, you need some additional funding right away, or you just had a big expense and you need to get those dollars reimbursed. So if we look here, this is the overview tab. These are all the tabs that you'll use. The overview tab is populated automatically, and it's telling me that the period for which you're requesting funds is the 1st of February to the 28th of February, and it's due on 3/15, which means I'm not late, so I've got a day to complete it. When you are using these system-generated requests, they are always going to be for a month. If you had mostly February expenses, but you had a leftover January expense and you have 2 expenses from March, you can submit them all in this February request if that's what you want to do. We're not going to hold you to those strict time frames. We want to make sure that you're submitting your request and documentation timely each month, but we know that sometimes it takes a while to pull things together, or you might have 2 expenses early in March that you really want to get reimbursed for, so you can add them to the February request. That's fine. We don't really have anything to do on this tab. Where we do our work is under, or where you'll do your work is under the financial tab. So you can see this is a fairly new subaward. Here's the budget. So out of 221,000, nothing's been spent yet. And here is the reimbursement request itself. If we look here, there's our contractual. We still have $31,000 remaining. Fringe benefits, we've got 44,000. Personnel, 143,000. We've got supplies and travel. The way that you start your reimbursement request could be up here, but there's one additional piece that I always like to do first, because otherwise I will forget to do it. So here's where you submit the request, but you come down here and there's an acknowledgement section. And that's when you certify that what you're submitting is correct to the best of your knowledge, and that you're submitting the supporting documents for that request. If you look here, there's no way for me to click on this, and you have to hit this edit button. Once you hit the edit button, this field becomes editable. And you come down here. And again, you're certifying that the costs are correct as far as you can tell. And you're going to say, I agree. If you say, I disagree, you're not going to be able to submit the request. And then you click this little button that says all applicable receipts or invoices are attached. You do that, and it says signed by, but you don't actually have to put anything there. That the system is going to sign for you. So again, I agree. I've attached everything, and you hit save. When we were testing this system last summer, every test reimbursement request I tried to submit, I had forgotten to do that certification down at the bottom, so I always got error messages. I'm trying to save you all from having those error messages. So now we're gonna request funds for specific line items. And the first line item that I typically think of is salary and wages. And so we're going to go into the personnel cost request line. And the way to do that is to click this little box with the arrow. And it's going to open up a window. And you hit new. And here it's asking the title of what you're requesting, some information about what you're requesting, and the rest of this is essentially how much you're asking for. So in this case, the grant includes the program manager salary. So I am going to put the program manager salary. Now you can put information in here. You can put salary for February for program manager S. Durham, or you can just put it's the program manager salary. We're not asking you to provide us with huge descriptions here. That said, let's say that your budget says program manager salary, but you haven't identified who that person is in your grant agreement or in your grant budget. If you just put S. Durham salary, we're not going to know who S. Durham is and what role that person has. And so we're going to probably have to ask you, which position is that so we can match it with your budget. In this case, S. Durham somehow makes a good amount of money, and that's the amount that we're requesting. And then here, all you have to do is put a 1 and here select numbers. This field gives you other options. I wouldn't bother putting anything else here. The easiest option is just to put 1 and numbers. There are no other charges. There's no program income dispersed, but I do have other salary that I want to request. So I could hit save here, but since I want to request other salary, I'm going to click new instead, and it's going to bring up another field. So we've got a program coordinator. We're going to ask for funds for the program coordinator salary. Program coordinator got paid that much. And then we've got one more staff member who's an assistant. Oops, I hit save. My apologies. I meant to hit new. I'm going to put in the assistant's salary. Now I'm going to hit save. And you can see here, I'm requesting $11,916.67 just in salary. After you save it, you can click the little X. And GovGrants is going to take a second to put that into your request, which it's just done. And you can see now I'm reporting that I spent that $11,900 in salary. So we charge fringe to this grant as well. And I bet you all can predict what I'm going to put in here. It's going to be fringe benefits for the program manager. Then the dollar amount. And I'm gonna put more fringe in for the coordinator. And just for the sake of time, I'm gonna skip the other person's fringe. But if I had those costs that I really needed to report, I would add them. So I'm gonna hit save again. And then I'm gonna close out of here. And that was $2,900 in fringe. And you can see it's reflected over here. And then we also have some supplies. So I've got $2,920 built into my budget for supplies. There are office supplies in that budget. We needed laptops for the program coordinator and the program manager, so we bought those laptops. I'm going to hit new. We bought 2 laptops. I'm going to also report my office supplies. All we bought this time were copy paper and ink cartridges, it looks like. Those are all of my supplies to report. I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to clear this out. It's going to think for a second, and then it's going to repopulate the request. So I've got supplies of $2155.19. So I've used a lot of my budget for the supplies, but that's okay. We've got salary and I've got fringe benefits. And that's all that I'm going to report this time. So my request is completed. I'm requesting $16,983.53. So the next step, if you go up here, I only have 2 options. One is edit and one is submit to grantor. I already edited it and filled out this section. I've already completed the request. So I'm going to send this to Louisville Metro Government. A little box comes up that says, are you sure that you want to submit it? And you just hit yes. Oh, thank you for asking about the documentation. I'm so sorry. I completely missed adding the documentation. So what we ask for your documents is that you upload them here under reimbursement files. And I'm going to show you how to do that under the ad hoc since I forgot. My apologies. My guide for what I'm doing is over here and I can't see it very well. So we're going to go into this grant. Oh, if you look here, it'll say the request was created and then submitted to the grantor. So at that point, we'll receive it, we'll review it, we'll approve it. There might be communication back and forth between us. And then once we approve it, we'll send it to our accounts payable division to pay it. So let's go into the grant again, and we can see how to do a ad hoc request. So I'm going to click on the subaward. And again, we have demos of all of this on our grantee resources page. So if I'm not being clear about certain things, or if I'm going too quickly, you can watch videos of it. And all of the reimbursement requests go under this tab called actuals. So here are my two reimbursement requests. I've got one that I had submitted previously and then the one I just submitted. But you can click on this button right here, reimbursement request. And it's going to populate one for you. Again, we ask that, 95 times out of 100, you're using the ones that GovGrants has populated for you. But you can also do this if you need to send us an extra request. So let's say we've got event expenses. So let's say we just had an event and we want to get repaid for the event as soon as possible. And let's say that the event was let's say it was March 7th. So we're only asking for money for March 7th. We're going to hit save and continue. And if you look right here, it asks you on this one and on the previous one, is this the final payment request? If so, you want to click that one. So now that I've hit save and continue, GovGrants is going to create that reimbursement request. And here's what it looks like. It looks just like the other. You can't tell any differences. We're going to go into the financial page. And let's say that let's say we just had some personnel costs that day. And we want to make sure we get paid for this extra personnel cost. And program manager. And just for the sake of time, this is all that I'm going to put into the request. And once this repopulates, you'll see that $2,000. And I would also need to come down here, save that. And then what I should have shown you before is how to upload the files. What we ask is that grantees submit their reimbursement request, as I showed you, according to your budget line items. That way, we don't have to try to figure out which cost goes with each part of your budget. If you put several things in one line on your reimbursement request, we're almost certainly going to have to contact you and say, could you explain these costs to us? Can you help us figure out how much is, being charged for these 6 people's salary if you put them all together in one line? We don't want to overburden any of our grantees, but if you all do a little bit of work on the front end to keep things organized for us, we're going to be able to review and approve your reimbursement requests much more quickly than if we have to have a lot of communication. So if you want to upload files, and each cost has to be supported by what we call proof of purchase and proof of payment documentation. And we're going to send everybody a list of those requirements after the training today. So you all will have it. So generally, proof of payment is either canceled checks or it's your bank statement. Proof of purchase is things like payroll reports, invoices, receipts, contracts, if you have contracts. So here we're just looking for salary. And what we would like is for you just submit your person.
Wait, can I speak with Sanan, please, from the translation division? Okay, thank you.
Hey, Emily, do you mind muting yourself? I can't reach the mute button just now. So here you would hit add files. And since we're only asking for payroll, we would like your payroll documentation to be submitted together. And you can either drag files here or you can upload them just like you upload any files by finding it on your network drive and clicking on it. Here it asks you what kind of documentation. In our testing system, it only gives you the choices of invoice or receipt. So neither of those apply to this. In the real system that you all use, it just asks you to click supporting documentation, I think is the name of it. So if you want, you can add a description here, but you don't have to. And let me get back to my file. In this case, I have a file I'm going to upload that says payroll documents. And I'm going to click upload. But we get paid through, let's say, ADP. And so people don't get payroll checks. The only proof of payment for our payroll is on our bank statement because ADP pulls the funds directly out of our bank statement. So my file says February bank statement, but we'll just pretend it's the March bank statement. And I'm going to upload that as well. Now on the first request, when we had supplies, we would want a payroll document, a set of documents. We would want the supplies documents. If you needed to upload your bank statement, you would do that as well. If the bank statement doesn't show us anything that we need for proof of payment, you don't have to send it to us. And anybody who's concerned about us having too much of your organization's information, you can redact from your documents the things that we don't need to know. We have plenty of grantees who black out all of their charges except the ones that are relevant to the grant. As long as we can still see that the bank account is in the organization's name and the time frame for the bank statement, the name of the bank, you're welcome to redact as much as you want. So I've completed all the files that I need. And all I have to do is submit to the grantor. So I'm gonna stop sharing. And I see Melissa just asked a question. Once I answer her question, I am happy to open it up for other folks to answer questions. I said submit the payroll documentation together. Oh, that's a really good point, Melissa. We want the bank statement to be submitted as its own separate document. Otherwise, if you were going to show us proof of payment using your bank statement, you might have to pull a page from your bank statement 10 different times to stick it with the appropriate documents. So we don't expect you all to do that. But if you did pay by check, it would be very helpful if you submitted, say, an invoice and the canceled check at the same time, back to back in an agreement, in a document packet. So I'm going to show you an example. In this case, this is an invoice, and you would upload a packet that has this invoice that says you bought printing services in the amount of $14.50 And then the very next document in the packet would be your canceled check. We cannot accept non-canceled checks. We have to have the canceled check version. But if your bank statement has those little bitty copies of checks in the back, those are acceptable. You don't have to necessarily download a copy of your canceled check. So you're all welcome to unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question, and we can answer as many questions as we have time for. Anybody? Well, I think that
I have a question.
I have, sorry, go ahead.
On the indirect costs, we would do like if we're doing 10%, it would be of whatever we're submitting in that month.
so there are some organizations who do indirect cost on a quarterly basis, and that's fine. I mean, that's more of an internal decision on your part. The easiest way for you all to get your money, though, is to submit the indirect cost with each request. And you have to be mindful, though, that you're requesting the correct amount. If you have a 10% rate for modified total direct cost, which is what the federal government calls certain line items of your budget, then you can't include in that calculation things like assets, equipment, or rent. There are a few other things like stipends to participants, to program participants, that can't be included in that calculation. So yes, and we don't expect any backup documentation to support your indirect cost. Although I would suggest that if your indirect cost that you're requesting isn't completely clear, that you might either include a note, or there's a way in the GovGrant system that you can communicate with us. So there's a collab button, and you can send an email directly in the GovGrant system. You would just find the appropriate person. So you could send it to me perhaps, and we would make sure that to take that message into consideration as we're reviewing your documentation. I think
Question on taxes.
Mhm.
We had submitted, there was a concern about taxes on one of the receipts. Are
Yes.
taxes supposed to be removed for all supplies or things that are submitted?
So the uniform grant guidance from the federal government, it's the Title II CFR 200, does not allow us to accept taxes from any organization, or sales taxes and other types of taxes from which an organization is exempt. So if you're a nonprofit, you're exempt from paying sales taxes and certain other taxes, and therefore we aren't allowed to reimburse you for them. Also, Metro government has a policy that we do not reimburse for sales tax. So even if this wasn't federal funding, we wouldn't be able to reimburse for those sales taxes. If you submit a request that does include sales tax, what we'll do is in the GovGrant system, we will disallow those sales tax dollars and let you know that we're doing so. But we'll pay you for the rest of the receipt as long as everything on the receipt is eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
It was mentioned that some of the emergency shelters might be getting a budget modification. Could you show us where in the system that's going to pop up and how you would need us to respond to that?
So we've been asked to complete those it's called a budget redirection for the shelters. So maybe sometime later this week, we're just going to go ahead and do that. The Louisville Accelerator team has provided us with that information. If they have not provided you with that information, then we need to get that information to you as soon as possible. And I can reach out to Alicia Ariotti today to make sure that you're all aware. I believe what Alicia did is she just took 10% from each of the line items and created the new item for, I believe, there were some project management costs. I'm really sorry, I haven't worked on this yet.
Yeah, that's exactly what she described. And someone said we might need to go into the system and accept it. So I didn't know if you knew and could demonstrate what that acceptance step might look like.
The way that we're going to do it, there's not an opportunity for you all to accept it. However, you're welcome to go in and do the request yourself. Metro government really is unable to do that type of budget change, except we have our system administrator and he has the ability to do that. And we've been asked by the Louisville Accelerator team to complete that work ourselves and not have the shelters do it because there was a decision made not to burden you all with that. But it's a really good question, not just in this context. On the grantee resources page, there is a demonstration on how to submit amendment request. And you could have an amendment request to move funds from one line item to another or to have new line items in your budget. It's too involved for me to demonstrate today, but it's on our resources page, or if you need some technical assistance, you can reach out to one of us on the team or to Daniel Kalin, and we can walk you through that process. And I'm really sorry, I can't see who I was talking to.
It was Greer, and that's fine. It's good to hear that we don't need to take another step.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have it done by the end of the week, and we'll send out an email letting folks know it's completed. But truly, it's not something that we should do as a general part of our business. So for other folks, if you need to make budget changes, you're going to want to go in and watch that video on how to submit an amendment request. It's not too involved. It's similar to the process that we just did with the reimbursement request. And Tara, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes. So I just had a couple of questions that I think are really minor. So one is, so for the reimbursement request, is there a way to copy the previous month's invoice or reimbursement request to be for that current month and then just update the numbers, or does that system not facilitate that? And then my second question is on each individual line item that we're requesting a reimbursement for, do we have to submit detail for each line item, or I mean, because you said bank statements would be sufficient. I just was curious how that may work.
Sure, absolutely. So the first question, I don't think GovGrants allows that. When we went through a very long process to identify the system that was right for us and then to customize GovGrants for our work, that was never an option that we were provided. And I'll let Daniel say if he knows of any way to do that. Daniel, are you still here?
What was that question? Sorry, I was answering somebody else's.
Is there a way to copy a previous reimbursement request and then make changes on the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, as with anything, I'm sure I can duplicate the record. I mean, I would prefer it be put in as a separate reimbursement request, but if they need to copy it over to a new one, we can probably look into that from a technical standpoint. There's nothing built into the system to allow for that.
Okay, well, we'll check that out, Tara, and if we can find a way to do it, we will. It probably would involve Daniel changing some. I'm going to say coding. I'm not a technical person, but changing something in the GovGrant system to allow that. But if we can make that happen, we'll let you know. And then as far as your other question, every single cost, whether it's all in one line item or not, has to be supported by proof of purchase and proof of payment documents. We only want you to upload your bank statement once. You don't have to upload it for every line item. The file upload section isn't tied to specific line items. We just ask you to label your documents according to those line items so that we're able to find them. What we don't want you all to have to do is upload 200 files. We thought it was much easier if you all could combine them. If on your end it's easier to upload many files, you're welcome to do that, but we were trying not to put too much burden on you all. We're going to send out those documents that detail our proof of purchase and proof of payment. For some things, it's going to be pretty, let's talk payroll. So if you've got 3 people charged to the grant, you're going to submit the payroll documentation for all 3 people and however they were paid. So whether it was through checks or through an external payroll system or vendor like ADP, there may be other documentation that's needed. If you get paid through ADP, we have to be able to tie your payroll to the amount that's withdrawn from your bank account. So we'll need to have documentation that matches that bank account number. But the documents that we're sending out today go through all of those details. It's a lot to handle during this type of training, but we also have the training on the grantee resources page where we go cross type by type and tell you exactly what's needed, if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think all of that makes sense, especially with the bank statement probably would be helpful for, monotonous purchases like office supplies and whatnot. Yeah, and I would really be interested to learn more about, that's just a system that we had used other places. So with the duplicating the reimbursement record, that just kind of cuts down on like having to put in like each of those individual sections. So that was just something that we've done before. That's why I was asking. Thank you so much though.
So I think it sounds like such a good idea that we're really going to try to make that happen, but we're limited to what GovGrants allows. So we're going to do our best though, because I know I wouldn't want to type it in every month if I were you all, and our apologies for that. The only thing is, again, if you all do a little bit of that work on the front end, it's going to make our review process really quicker. And then were there some questions in the chat? How do we get access to GovGrants? It looks like Dexter has sent you the link to our grantee resources page. It has that link in there directly to GovGrants. And what if your bank does not give copies of every canceled check? I don't know truly how to address that. We either have to have a canceled check or we have to have your bank statement that shows the canceled check pictures. If you absolutely cannot get canceled checks from your bank, when you submit a reimbursement request, please talk to our team member who's handling your reimbursement request, and we will see what kind of alternate documentation we can allow for that. We're not going to say, no, absolutely, we're not going to pay you for that, but we have to look at and see what you can provide to determine whether we can accept it. And let's see. So yes, most taxes are allowed through this. It's only those taxes for which you're exempt. So any taxes you're required to pay, if they're part of your budget, so payroll taxes, FICA, Medicare, those types of things, we're gonna reimburse you for those. So don't worry, it's only those ones from which you're exempt. We've got, how do we got access? So we want we want you all to charge us for your gross pay. I mean, that's the cost of your business, right? That's the cost of the program. So unless there's a compelling reason that you all don't want to charge us for gross pay, please charge us for gross pay. We make an assumption in your grant budget that those are gross pay. On top of the gross pay, if you have other fringe benefits in your grant budget, we will pay you for those as well. So things like the insurance, 401k, things like that. As long as you have fringe benefits in your grant agreement, we should be good. And I will answer a couple more questions about the bank statement. We cannot accept just a record that says check number 2000 cleared in the amount of $1,400. Just that line on the bank statement, it doesn't meet our documentation requirements because we don't know who that check was written to. But we will definitely work with you if you cannot get canceled checks from the bank. Please do not be discouraged. We are magicians here at the Office of Management and Budget, and it's our goal to get as much as we can paid to you all for the expenses you incurred in this program. Any other questions? All righty, so anybody who's already accepted their grant in GovGrants, the reimbursement request process, part of this training has ended. You're welcome to leave. Anybody who still has to accept their grant in GovGrants might want to hang on, and I'll show you quickly how to do that. The person who just submitted a private question, if you want to hang around to the end, I will be happy to answer that at the end of this training after folks have left. So goodbye to those of you who aren't staying. Thank you very much for attending. We are committed to helping you all to any extent possible, providing, one-on-one training if necessary. I hope those of you who are already working with our team, are pleased with the level of service that we're providing you all, and we hope to continue to do so throughout the life of this very important American Rescue Plan work. And I'll answer that. There's a question about receiving notification of award of grants, and I'll cover that in just a second. I'm going to give everybody about a minute if you want to leave. Thanks, everybody. And if those of you who need to accept your grant want to hang on, I'll show you how to do that.
Yeah, we had a few questions about when the grants are going to be put in, Susan. I know that's just ongoing work. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that to anybody who's registered as an organization, but you haven't seen a grant inside of GovGrants sent to you yet to review. We're still in the process of getting that information put into the system for some of our new ocean grants.
That's exactly right. So what happens, your real grant agreement is the one that goes through DocuSign and your organization signs that. That's your real grant. But in GovGrants, we have to issue a grant so that you can start using the system. You cannot submit reimbursement requests unless you've accepted a grant in GovGrants. So the process goes through DocuSign. So let's just choose OCEAN, the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, since Daniel mentioned them. OCEAN has been awarding quite a few grants for their external agency fund program. And what happens is OCEAN routes the grant for signatures. So your executive director or CEO will sign it. Folks here at Metro Government will sign it. In that case, OCEAN should send you a copy of the paper grant agreement. I mean, it's really electronic these days. Nothing's paper anymore, but trying to contrast it with what's in GovGrants. So you should get a copy. Somebody at your organization should receive a copy of that. If you haven't, you should contact the Metro agency person or the agency itself that awarded you the funds. I mean, we can probably send you a copy of it as well. We have a copy, but it should be coming automatically from the Metro agency that awarded the funds. Perhaps they didn't send it. If you need a copy of your grant agreement, you're welcome to put it in chat and my team will capture that and we'll send it to you today if we've already gotten our copy. There are some grant agreements that have just been signed in the last couple of days that we might not have the finished copy yet. So once we have the signed document, we enter it into GovGrants. And the way that we do that is we take the most important information from your grant agreement, the period of the grant, the amount of the grant budget, and we duplicate it in GovGrants. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Once we don't put all of the information from the grant agreement because if you've seen them, they're, 5, 6, 7, 12 pages of legal language, and you already have that. So we're not going to put all of that information into GovGrants. We enter it. The primary user at your organization will receive an email that says, please accept your grant in GovGrants. And that person is going to go into GovGrants and accept it. The grant was accepted the moment your executive director, president, CEO signed it and everybody else signed it. In GovGrants, even though it's saying accepted, it's really just an administrative step so we can get going in GovGrants. So let me share my screen again. So here is the grant that we were working on before. And if you look up here, it says grants active. If we go to grants all, you're going to see there's another grant and it's sitting here in draft form. So that's the grant that we're going to accept. But there's a better way for you to access this. Again, if we're on the home screen, we're going to see a task waiting for us to accept this grant. So if we look here, we've got one item to do in the grants section, grants module, and it's asking us to review the grant. So this would be the grantee needs to review the grant to accept it. We're going to click the little arrow again to get started. And here is the grant. It's got the title. It's got information about your organization. It's got a brief description. Again, your grant agreement has pages and pages of description. We're only putting the basic information in here because your real grant agreement is the one that's signed. We've got key contacts from your organization, where the program's operating. Let's go into these other tabs before we decide whether we want to accept it. So if we go into terms here, it tells you that there's a monthly payment request that's due. And if we look in these other tabs under management, all of this is blank right now. It shows any site visits that are assigned to this, any desk reviews, which is a monitoring that's done virtually, or any amendments that are on here. Actuals is just really for the reimbursement request. So what we want to look at next is the budget. Here's our budget period. It starts on April 1st, runs through the end of 2024. This is a good budget. It's $4.3 million that has been awarded. Here's what the budget looks like. It's 4 million in other, and that's rental assistance. And then we've got costs for personnel and supplies. So you would take your PDF grant agreement and verify that this information is correct. Does my grant agreement really start on 4/1, end on 12/31/2024? Is it really for this amount? And does this look like my budget? And if that's correct, you hit accept after approval. And we'll talk about the email in just a second. And this says this action will accept and approve the subaward. Are you sure you want to proceed? And that's yes. So you can write a comment. You can say, looks good. You don't have to write a comment in that case, I don't think, but if so, you could just write accepted. I think it gives you the option not to write that. And then it just shows accepted, and that's as easy as it is. Now, how do you know to accept your award? Well, let's go into this organizational profile. And this is information about your organization. And it's going to show me that this person who we've named demo user is the primary user for your organization. Now, let's say that this says Susan Durham is the primary user. And you can have more than one primary user. It's just if you need more than one, then you'll have to contact Daniel and he can make multiple people primary users. I believe that's the case. Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong. I know you can have multiple primary users. I believe Daniel has to make that happen. So this demo user or Susan Durham, once Metro government sends the grant agreement to the organization, this primary user is going to get an email. It could be, if you've got 3 primary users, they're all going to get that email. And it'll happen as soon as we hit send to grantee. I think GovGrants sends out emails every few minutes, so it won't be, 2 seconds later, but within 5 or 10 minutes, that person's going to get an email and they're going to need to go in and accept the grant. Anyone whose role is not primary cannot accept the grant. You would have to get the primary person to do that. Now, if you're an Ocean grantee for the external agency fund grants, we just started about 2 days ago putting those grants into GovGrants, and I think right now we've only sent about 3 or 4 grantees those grant awards, but we're continuing to do that work this week. I expect almost everybody will have their grant agreement in GovGrants before the end of the week, although there are a couple of grantees that the grants still aren't signed, so that might take a little longer, but we're working as fast as we can to get those on there. Did that answer all your questions about how you know to accept the grant? If anybody has any others, I'm happy to answer them. And I see a question from Jill. Jill, just to make sure that those folks have to be registered in GovGrants before we can give them roles. And if they are, then Daniel can easily assign them all as primary users. The primary user is the person or persons who can accept grant awards, who can submit reimbursement requests. Any user on your end can prepare a reimbursement request, but only a primary user can hit the submit to grantor button. So that's something important. And we're happy to give you all as many, make as many of your folks primary users as you need. We're not trying to block anybody from having that role, but we recognize that each organization has different systems, and we don't want to just assign everybody a primary role if there's somebody in your organization who shouldn't have that role, who is more of a preparer than, say, an approver or a submitter. Does anybody have any questions about accepting your grant award? All right, so if anyone needs to see a demonstration, Daniel's going to show you all how to register an organization and add users, and you can add users at any point with one caveat. Each organization has a limited amount of licenses that we have provided you, and we've based that on our own business needs because we pay the GovGrants company for each one of those licenses. So we're giving 2 or 3 licenses to every organization. But if you know you need more licenses than that, just send us an email and we will give you the number of licenses that you need to operate within GovGrants. But because we don't know that number on the front end, we're limiting it, and it's up to you all to let us know to add more. So does anybody want to see how to register the organization, or are all of you registered already?
We are registered, but we'd love to see the process to add users. Thanks.
Sure. We'll
I'd like to see the registration process.
I'm sorry, was that yes, show the registration process?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to hand this off to Daniel and he can show you. I haven't gone through the registration process myself, so I'm going to turn things over to him. Judy, I think we're up to date on all of our registrations. I approved someone this morning. I would say it could take up to 2 days depending on when you know, what time of day you register, but it also might be 3 minutes after you do. It just depends on how quickly we get the notification from GovGrants and how quickly we can get into GovGrants to do it.
All right, for registering your organization, the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the link that's provided in the documentation that either the LAD team or Susan and our grant team has sent over. But you can always go to the grantee resources page that we had demonstrated earlier. Grants.louisvilleky.gov is the vanity URL that we have set up that currently redirects to this recipient login page. In this particular case, I'm going to be using the test environment. So this is going to have sandbox and some other information in it because this URL is a little bit different than the production environment. But like I said, you can always get to the grantee resources page. I mean, it's on our louisvilleky.gov website underneath the management and budget department. We have a grantee resources page on the left-hand side here. Once you've either gone to grants.louisvilleky.gov or to the direct recipient login, you're going to arrive at a landing page that looks similar to this one right here. We're going to hit register. In this particular case, most everyone here on the call is going to be registering as an organization. If you're an individual that's receiving a grant or an award, and you're registering with your social security number and not your employer identification number, your EIN, then you may end up using the individual registration. So once you've selected the register as an organization, you can, expand out these. It's going to recommend that you go to sam.gov and set up a UEI number for your organization, and that's just a unique identifier through the federal government that identifies your organization. I would highly
Daniel, if
recommend.
I can just say, if you don't have a UEI, you can still register.
Correct,
But,
yeah.
but most of you are going to want to register on sam.gov or at least get a UEI from sam.gov, but it can be, after this registration process if you need it.
Yeah, but yeah, the one piece of information you need to register, you do have to have an EIN, or else you're not going to be able to complete this process. Once we expand out that organization and hit begin registration, it's going to bring up a user agreement. That's just a general agreement for using our system here. We'll hit agree.
And we do have a user guide solely on the registration process and adding new users on the grantee resources page, as well as a demo video.
I'm just putting just some test information. It is not an actual EIN, but I believe this is one that's currently not in use on this system here. If you do have your UEI number, I would recommend putting it in this field. It's not a required field, but it will pull down your information from sam.gov, so you won't have to fill out your organizational name, your address, all of your contact information. It'll automatically fill that out for you. So after I put in the EIN, we'll hit save and continue. So this is going to take us into the next step of the registration process. This is where we'll put in what's called test organization. The organization type, try to answer this as accurately as possible. In the event we use this system to make general public grant opportunity announcements and we want to restrict them to specific organization types, this will come into play. So if we're only allowing like a nonprofit organization to apply for a specific grant within the system, that's where, like I said, this categorization would come into effect. So we'll just put this as a nonprofit organization. Reason for registration. I mean, in the majority of the cases with everyone that's on this training today, you'll be managing a grant on this system. If you, for some reason, were wanting to explore grant opportunities in the event that we do use the grant announcement feature with this system, that might be one of the reasons why you register. So I'll go ahead and select manage a grant. We'll fill out our address information. And this will be the primary address for your organization that you'll want to put in here. Like I said, if you put in your UEI number on that previous page here, all of this information would have already populated with what it pulls down from sam.gov. And any field that's going to be required, it's either going to let you know when you go to hit save down here at the bottom to move to the next step in the process. It's going to give you an error message at the top of the page saying maybe you didn't select the organization type or the reason for registration or one of these other fields. You should, if you're familiar with forms, it's going to have a red asterisk indicating the required fields. So we'll set the primary organization address, and if the payment address is going to be different, you'll put that here. Now we're making our payments through a different system from GovGrants, so the payment aspect of it isn't particularly relevant. So I would typically put yes, that your payment address is the same as the organization address. But if for some reason you want to indicate that it's different with inside of GovGrants, you can put no here and put in a different payment address. But I know we're making our payments through a Workday platform that we use here at the Office Management and Budget. So whatever addresses we have in that system are going to be where we're going to be making the payments to. So now we have everything entered in here as far as the organization address. And any of the other relevant fields, we'll hit save. And it does have an option here if you want to attach files. I don't think we've used that feature up to this point, but if you want to upload any supporting files or any informational files related to your organization you think might be helpful, you certainly can submit those here. And we'll hit save. And so that page that we just did to step 2 out of 3 is for handling all of your organizational information. This third page here is going to be for setting up your authorized representative. The authorized representative is going to be the first person who registers your organization. In the event that we need to do any type of digital signing through this system, which we're currently not leveraging that. We're having all of our grant agreements done through DocuSign separately from this system here. But the authorized representative can be used within the system here to digitally sign documents. They also are able to edit the organizational info on the organization page. So you probably want to have the person that registers your organization be one of the primary representatives for the organization, or the person who's going to be handling a lot of the information.
And Daniel's right. You don't want it to be someone who manages a single program at your organization unless it's the only program that's ever going to receive grants from Metro government. You want it to be someone who has who oversees multiple programs or projects, or is in your finance department or your grant department, or it could be your executive director. We made it open so that you could make those decisions on your all's end, but we want to make sure you don't just make it a single program manager when that person might have to accept grants related to other programs that your organization operates.
Yeah, and so once you're setting up this authorized representative information, you're going to put in your first and last name. It's going to pull over the same address information from the previous page. If for some reason you want to put a separate address, like if you work from a different location that's specific to you individually, you can certainly put in a different address and zip code information in here. One of the key areas I want to highlight is making sure when you put in the primary email address here for the person, if you're registering yourself and for the organization, it's eventually going to set this email address to your username that you're going to use to log into the system here. And if for some reason your organization, this product runs over top of a Salesforce backend or a Salesforce framework. So if for some reason your organization is already using Salesforce in a different capacity for tracking contacts, or if you're part of a larger organization that uses Salesforce, sometimes there's username conflicts. So if you're registering, if for some reason the email address that you're putting in here is your primary email address is already set up on a different Salesforce system here, we'll have to work a different workaround for you in your organization to get you all set up in here. And what'll happen is you'll go through the registration process and it'll say it sent you an email and you just never receive that email. Now that's independent of sometimes the emails will end up landing in people's junk or spam email folders for some reason. So I would make sure you check those folders and add the Salesforce sender to your safe senders list, and you should be able to right click on the email if it's for some reason lands in your other or your junk or your spam. You should be able to right click on that email and add that sender to your safe sender list. But in this particular case, this GovGrants test user number 19 is just a Outlook email box I've set up. It's not set up on any other Salesforce system. So I'm setting that as the primary email. It's eventually going to be my username. And then if you want to put a different phone number from the one that you have for your organization, like if somebody needs to contact you directly, and you want them to have that contact information in the system here, you can certainly put that here. We'll just use the same phone number that we put in for the organization. And we'll hit save. There's going to be like a little security challenge here. Just to make sure you're not an automated system trying to register on here. It's just kind of a human verification. And you should get this confirmation message letting you know that your registration request has been completed, and it's sent to us at LMG to look over at Louisville Metro for us to review your registration application and make sure that, you know, it's one of the known organizations that we're working with. Because we don't want to have, due to the fact we have limited licenses, we're currently not allowing just everybody that is part of an organization to register. We're trying to limit it to just the organizations that have a grant or an award through Louisville Metro. And you certainly can store this registration ID is unique to your organization. So if for some reason you're not receiving the registration email, or for some reason we haven't approved it yet, you certainly can ask us about your organization's registration, why it hasn't been completed yet, or maybe it hasn't been approved. So that's kind of the entire registration process. And I'm going to pull up, let's see if I can't pull this up and go ahead and approve this organization. So over here, this is the perspective from, I'm logged in as myself from as a Louisville Metro user as the grantor. I'm gonna look under pending subrecipient registrations, and you'll see we have this is the registration that we just put in today on 3/14. You can kind of tell that's the EIN that I used for test organization. And so we'll at Louisville Metro, we'll get a pending task the same as you all would for putting in a reimbursement request, except our pending task is to look at your organization, review the information, and then from here we have to assign however many licenses or seats your organization will have. By default, we've been setting this to 2, just due to the not trying to overuse our available licenses. But as Susan talked about earlier, we certainly can make this number, increase this number if you want to have 3 people accessing the system, or 4 for some reason. Okay, and so here's the email that you should receive from Salesforce or from Gov Grants, letting you know that this is, you'll get one where it'll say your organization registration has been approved. And this is going to happen after Louisville Metro will receive your request to register. We'll go in here and approve the registration, and then you'll get the email letting you know that your registration has been approved. Once your registration has been approved, you're going to get a separate email from salesforce.com on the registered email address. So that means the one that we set the registration email address as the GovGrants test user number 19. which is the one I added as the authorized primary authorized user for the organization. So should after a certain amount of time, you're going to receive a second email from Salesforce, and that's going to have your username, which will be that email address you registered with. And it's going to have a link in the email for you to go and set your password. And so once you've received that second email and clicked on that link and set your password, you should be able to go back to the actual login screen where earlier where we hit register, except this time you're going to be going in there and putting in your login information. This particular case, it takes a few minutes for the system to send over that email with your login information, so I'm not going to demonstrate that aspect of it. But once you get your username and password set up, you'll be able to log in here just as Susan did earlier when walking through the submitting a reimbursement request or accepting your grant. And it's just going to be a username and password, and that's going to take you in there, and you're going to eventually land at your landing page for your organization.
And once you have that ability to log in, that's when you can start inviting other people at your organization to register.
Yeah, and I can certainly demonstrate that. I can do that on our let me go ahead and log in with the information.
Yeah, you can use the demo account we used today for the reimbursement, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm going to pull that up now.
Thank you.
And you'll see this organization doesn't have any pending task anymore because Susan, and she's already accepted grant and she's already taken care of the payment request for this organization. So you'll notice they don't have any more pending or past due task. Once you've logged in into the portal as your primary authorized representative for the org or the person who initially registers, on the left-hand side here, when you're on this home icon up here at the top, that looks like the house, you can always click on this home icon and it's going to take you back to this landing page we're on right here. And, as we talked about earlier, it's going to show all your most recently viewed items within the platform. In this particular case, we're going to be going to organization profile on the left-hand side here. And this is going to take you to your organization's profile page within inside of GovGrants or this, our grant management system here. And we're going to find all the information, using demo user was this is the email address we just logged in with. So in this particular case, and I'm happy to help out any organization that needs to add people or is maybe, have any difficulty or is not sure how to do this process, or I'm always happy to help with anything related to registering or adding new contacts. So once we're on the organization page and you need to add a new person to the system that needs to be able to log in for your organization. In this particular case, we've assigned 3 maximum users for this organization. They currently only have 1 active user. You'll be able to see that their status is active. And if they have a check mark here by is user, then that means that they're consuming 1 of 3 of these maximum user licenses. So to add somebody new, we're going to hit new underneath the contacts here. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what all email addresses we've used on this portal here before.
Daniel, you can just type in my email address. That's fine. I can
Okay.
delete the email when I receive it.
Yeah, well, let me just see if. Yeah, well, earlier we were talking about they do have the ability to set it as a primary. The person that's adding these contacts, they do have the capability to add them as a primary or secondary. Just to reiterate, Susan said the primary role inside of this grants management system is designed for people that are able to submit things on the organization's behalf, whereas secondary users are only able to view and edit things. They're not able to actually submit things. So there are some cases where organizations are having 3 or 4 primary users because they have multiple people they want to be able to handle things or submit things on their behalf. If for some reason you don't want people having that capability, you just want to be able to view or edit objects, or say a reimbursement request, you only want them to be able to enter into information, but you want to have somebody else come in and review that and then submit it for the organization. You can have one person in a secondary role, and then the primary person managing the grant can be in a primary role. You can certainly add non-user contact information. This would be like a non-licensed user if you just want to add just general contact information to your organization profile page, and they never have to log into the system. You'd want to use this non-user role. And that's just going to, like I said, that's just going to add that user's or that person's contact information to this profile page. But they're not going to be able to ever log in or receive login information. So we'll go ahead and set this one to primary, and we'll just call Susan. You certainly don't have to select this contact type. You can leave this as none. If you want to designate, there are some general contact titles that are in here already. We'll just put Susan in there as a grants manager. And so in the event that you need to add additional users that need to be able to log in and access things on your organization's behalf, this is going to be the process to do that. You're going to want to make sure they're in the primary or secondary role. So we've gotten everything entered in here. We're going to hit save. Okay, well, that's what I thought.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's fine. It won't let you add, if somebody's already in the system, it's not going to allow you to add them again. I'm just trying to remember, I have quite a few email addresses. I just didn't pull up one ahead of time. Okay. So that one took. If for some reason you need to edit it before closing out this window, you certainly can edit that again. Once that's been saved, you just close out of that pop-up box there, and you're going to see this demo user 2 is now listed right here. It's going to have them as a status of new, and you'll see that underneath the is user, they have an X, meaning that they're not an actual user yet. And you're going to see 3 icons to the right here. If for some reason you wanted to view more of that information about that contact, because it does have like their address information, maybe some additional information that isn't listed underneath this table here. You can certainly hit view there. If you want to edit their information for any reason, you can click on the pencil icon. And then the main one that we want to take a look at is if somebody is not a user and they've been added in here, it's going to have this icon to the right that looks like a paper airplane, and it's where you can send invitations. So I would hit send invitation, and it's going to send out an email, an invite to complete, setting up your account on this system here. It's going to set this email address as your username, the same as it did for this GovGrants Test User 09 or the other one that we set up a new organization with, it's going to always set the email address to the username by default, the way this system's set up. So that particular user is going to get an email. Their username is going to be the GovGrants Test User 16 at outlook.com. And then it's going to have another similar link and an email that's going to come later that's going to allow you to set the password for this account. And once that's done, then that user is going to be able to log into this system as well. The same as we just logged in.
Daniel, do you mind going to the home page real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
We've had somebody miss how to get to where you are. So if you can just show that piece of it.
Yeah,
again.
okay. Well, yeah, you can always, you know, up here at the top, there's, I would treat these almost like browser tabs up here. These are going to take you to your main areas in the system here. You know, if you want to look at your grant and your subaward, you'll want to click on the grants tab. If you want to look at reimbursement requests or any type of thing related to monitoring, if for some reason we're doing any type of site reviews or any type of follow-up monitoring on organizations, it'll be found underneath this tab. But yeah, from up here at the top, you just would want to click on the home icon. It's always going to take you to that main landing page. This is the same page that you'll come to by default when you log in to the grants management system. It's going to take you to this home icon here. And then on the left-hand side, there's going to be this organization profile. Hopefully everybody's able to see that on the left-hand side here. We click on organization profile. And then this is going to take us to your organization information page. And this is by default, it's going to take you to this overview tab, which is going to have, you know, all of your organization's address information, your UEI that you would have registered with. Underneath the contact section, it's going to show you anybody who's set up on this system or has maybe been invited, or if you need to add new contacts to invite.
So that's how you would start out to do the invitation right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly when you're on this organization profile page, you know, there are some other tabs up here, the related log, you can always find, this is helpful for looking at any relevant information for your organization. Like underneath this related log tab, we can see our active grant that we have in the system here for wraparound services. You can also access that from clicking on grants and get to it from there, but it shows up on this page too.
Daniel, somebody has asked how to delete somebody who's no longer with the organization. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah, the initial person that's something that I would just contact whoever's your contact at Louisville Metro. I would reach out to them, whoever's on the grants compliance team, the person who you're interfacing with on a regular basis that's assigned to your organization here at Louisville Metro. That's also the person who's reviewing your reimbursement request. I would just reach out to that person and have them see about removing that particular registered user. In the event that the user's never done anything on the system here, once they're active in the system here, like once this demo user becomes active, since I created them using this primary user account, this demo user, I'll eventually have like a little delete icon here to the right of them once they're active in the system as a user. But if for some reason if they're tied to any records inside of the system, Salesforce prevents you from actually deleting that user until all the records that they've worked with have been assigned to a different person. So in some particular cases, it's as easy as the organization logging in here and then clicking a trash, the little delete icon to the right of the contact or the user. But then sometimes if they've already performed task in the system here, it'll require some work on Louisville Metro's side just to get that user removed.
And Daniel's correct. We had deleted somebody from our part of the system when she left. And we found out it caused problems on some of our records that we had in there, and we had to fix it after the fact. It's much easier if we can get that fixed on the front end before anybody's deleted. So yes, whoever you work with, whoever your primary contact is here for your reimbursement request, just let them know, and we can bring in Daniel and we can delete that account without causing those problems down the road.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, once this demo user 2 becomes active, I will have an icon to delete this user. And since this user hasn't performed any task on the system, they haven't, like, in the event that I went in there as this demo user 2 and I created a payment request on behalf of the organization, it's going to have me as the owner of that record inside of this Salesforce-based system. So when you go to delete that user, it's not going to let me do that because there are records inside of the system that are tied to that user account. So it wants to make sure that those are properly transferred to a new person. So sometimes there, like I said, there's back-end work that has to be done to delete. And this only applies to someone if they're an active licensed user. If they're just an organizational contact, a non-user, you can add and remove those at any time. But as soon as they become an active user in the system, if they have, created any records within the system here that are tied to that account, it's likely going to give you an error message when you try to delete that person. It's going to say this user's tied to a record, so it's unable to delete them. In some particular cases, like I said, you will be able to delete that. If you've added somebody on here and they've left the organization and they haven't ever actually logged in here or done anything for the organization, then it should be as easy as just clicking on that delete icon. But sometimes it just depends. Like I said, if that person's done work within the system, that you may not be able to actually delete that user without some assistance.
So does anybody have any other questions about registration or adding users? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So Daniel, I think you were getting ready to tell us what to do if we need an additional user added, if we need 3 instead of the 2 that you automatically get. What do we do?
You can just send us an email either within GovGrants or send an email to the person that you're working with on your reimbursement request. And once we get that information, we'll go in and update your users.
Yeah, if you need this maximum user allowed number increased, that's something where you just reach out to Louisville Metro. Like I said, by default, we've typically been setting this to 2 for each organization, just to control the amount of licenses that we're giving out initially, just because we have a limited number available. So we're not trying to set up more for an organization than what they need. If you don't anticipate somebody from your organization ever logging into this system or assisting with the grant or putting in reimbursement requests, I wouldn't recommend adding them as a primary or secondary user. But if you do anticipate people assisting with these reimbursements or needing to access the system, we can always, we can definitely increase that number. And it just depends. I mean, and some organizations we have work with organizations of all different sizes. So some organizations are smaller, may have less people, and some organizations may be larger entities or have a lot more people that need to log in and access and perform tasks within the system here. So we certainly can always increase that number.
Yeah, yes, we're happy to give you as many licenses as you need to work on the American Rescue Plan grants. Eventually, this system is going to roll out to our other metro agencies, and all of metro agency grants or metro government grants are going to be managed. Right now, when it's just ARP, we want to limit it to the folks who work on ARP. But eventually, you'll be able to have many more licenses. And for ARP, we're happy to give you what you need now. Did anybody else have a question about this specifically? We've got about 12 minutes left, and I know a couple folks had some questions that from earlier.
Okay. Once you submit everything and submit all your information, how long does it take for one to process a reimbursement? And also, do you all do direct deposits?
So those are two excellent questions. I will tell you a little bit about our process here. We have 2 staff members who review every reimbursement request. Once they complete their reviews, I review in a more limited capacity and I approve, and then we can generate payment. And the way we generate payment is we contact our accounts payable division, which is right here in this same building. We give them an invoice that we create so that they can generate payment to you all. Our ARP grants get processed faster than almost every type of payment Metro government issues. They are supposed to be processed within our financial system within about 1 business day, which is very fast considering at any given time we might have tens of thousands of invoices to process. Once accounts payable has processed your invoice, a check will be printed, but sometimes there is a couple of days delay for the check to be printed. Our checks are printed in Cincinnati. It might take a few days for the check to reach your organization. We are able to make payments through ACH, which is kind of like direct deposit. It might be exactly like direct deposit. I'm not sure if they're synonymous. If there's a reason why you need a particular invoice to be paid through ACH, you will need to let us know on the front end. And then we will need some information from your bank in order to process that payment through ACH. And if we process that payment by 3 p.m. on, say, today, you would have the payment tomorrow hit your bank account. So if you have a particular invoice that needs to be paid that way, please let us know and we can start that ACH process for you.
Okay, that's good to know. Is there a way that we could just get all of our payments through ACH?
So right now, we've been instructed that we should pay invoices through ACH only when a grantee asks us to pay a particular invoice that way. So we're going to have to handle it on an invoice by invoice basis at this point. At some point, we move to a different model, but that's what we've been instructed to do at this point.
Great, thank you.
Of course. So I know some of you folks had some other questions. I know some of them were sent to me privately, but I'm afraid there's still some folks on. If you want to ask them to this smaller group, I'm happy to answer them, or if I can't answer them, Daniel or the team can do that.
So once you I have a question. Once you accept the grant agreement, how long does it take to roll over into the actual management system?
Once you accept it, we're going to get a pending task on our side to activate that grant. Again, it depends on how quickly we can respond to that. But I would say within a day, we probably have the grants activated. Right now, Dexter Thomas is managing that process and he's very, very quick. He will probably activate your grant within an hour of when he receives that email, but I can't promise that will happen all of the time because of just the way businesses sometimes, or somebody might have a day off, so there might be a certain delay. But we're really responsive. Every one of us is working within the GovGrant system on a daily basis. The other 4 folks on this call who are compliance specialists, they're in it all day, every day. So they're going to get things done very quickly. Once we activate it, you can start managing the grant within GovGrants on your end. And I think there were some folks who were waiting. Judy, can you remind me which organization you're with, and we'll update your users today.
Yes, thanks, Susan. I am with CEOC, Louisville Healthcare.
Oh, that's right. I should know that, Judy. My apologies.
No, not at all. Thank you.
And I think West Chestnut, did you have a question? And I think there was someone else who had a question that was sent privately.
This is Josh from Boys and Girls Haven.
Hi, Josh.
Hi. When we had our initial meeting with Office of Management and Budget, they were talking about our status as a vendor, and even in the signed MOU, it basically said that we were just going to invoice through a simple spreadsheet sent by email. So there was no mention of using Gov grants or using the system when we initially, in the initial discussions of the project. So is it, I just want to confirm that we do need to access the system for our project.
What grant do you have?
So it's through Ocean. It's the TRC expansion project. And so we're subcontracted with Ocean to provide mental health support.
Susan, I can probably help with this.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, what's in your MOU, the process through which you can be reimbursed that is spelled out in your MOU? That would be the process you follow.
Okay. So we're probably not going to be accessing the system?
No.
Request? Okay.
No. And Susan, if you have any questions about my response, you and I could talk privately, but yes, pretty sure that I'm clear on that one.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Yes, Chester, I would like to discuss that later today if you have some time. Anybody
Absolutely.
else have questions? We've got 4 more minutes, so I'm happy to stay around another few minutes if anybody else has other questions. Otherwise, I just want to thank everybody for attending. This has been a fantastic group, and you all have asked really good questions, and we're excited to work with you to make your American Rescue Plan grants successful.
Yeah, and Susan, I was also wanting to quickly illustrate on here, for some reason, if your organization is configured for a certain amount of maximum users, and you'll eventually find out when you try to add, like in this particular case, I tried to add a 4th user and then send out that invite, and it lets you know it's your organization to reach the maximum amount of users allowed, and letting you know that you must deactivate 1 or more before adding additional users. So in this particular case, this organization was configured out for 3 maximum users, and we were trying to add a 4th. So that's where you'll end up if you're trying to add users for your organization as yourself in there by adding them through this contact list. That just could be the message that you would get if you tried to go over that maximum user value.
Thank you, Daniel. And Judy, I approved your all's registration this morning. I think I approved it for 3 already, but I'll go in and verify. And if it's not 3, I can move that. That's what you said, right? 3. Okay. I'm pretty sure I did 3 because I've been working with you all so much, and I thought you all might need at least 3, but I'll verify that.
Okay, all right, thanks, Susan. And Josh Williams sent me the 2 email approvals, just maybe within the past half an hour.
Okay.
I'm going to complete that process. So thank you. Yes, if that's 3.
Of course, I'll verify.
Thank you.
Yes, Diane, what can we do for you?
Hi, Susan. Thank you all. I just want to thank everyone for walking us through this process. I've been learning on the job. You guys, everyone that I'm dealing with has been exceedingly patient because, again, I'm learning. So I've no doubt that I'll have additional questions. I did have the question just with regard to So there's been on additional documents and clarifications, etc. So I just didn't know if I needed to continue monitoring .gov, the grants site, or if there would be like an email that said, here's where you're at in the process. I'm assuming there's going to be an email.
That primary user is going to get an email saying accept the grant.
Right.
As far as managing the grant, the only thing that we're doing currently in Gov Grants is the reimbursement request. And if you can just be mindful, about 98% of you all have payments or payment requests that are due on the 15th of every month. And that's all you're going to have to go in and do is that every time. And you'll see that pending task. Gov Grants is probably going to send you an email that says, hey, remember you've got this, but I can't swear to that. And if you'll just keep mindful that every month you have to go into that. The only other things that you'll want to do is if you have to submit an amendment request to change your budget, that will be done, but that's on your time frame. It's not on Gov Grants time frame. And then at some point, very soon, we're going to start doing monitorings on some grants, and that'll take place in Gov Grants as well. But the monitorings are going to start on really high dollar level grants. So if you've got a smaller level grant, and I'm not sure what your grant award is, your grant might not get monitored. We're starting with the big tens of millions of dollars grants for the monitoring.
I'd be more than happy to accept the amount and to be monitored closely. We still have about $5 million to raise of our new building in Southwest Jefferson County for intergenerational communities. But thank you guys so much. This has been incredibly helpful.
Sure, absolutely. Anybody have anything else? Well, thank you again. We're going to send out the recording. I believe it's a link to the recording. We're going to send out getting started with Gov Grants. We're going to send out our documentation requirements, and the getting started with Gov Grants has all of the information you need to get started. Plus, it also directs you to our grantee resources page. I really want to thank you again. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need assistance from any of us. And again, we're really honored to have a chance to work with your organizations to make Louisville a better, stronger place.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. Chester, do you have a minute?
Not a problem.